All right, guys. We'll make a start. We'll make a start.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick look. Okay. All right. So yeah, welcome, guys. I can see Alex, Chris, Everton, Edvaldo, Georgie, Gus, Jack, James, Lewis, Matt, Morgan, Russ, Scott, Sergio, Simon, another Simon again, Simon Ord as well, Steve King and Vash from Bermuda. So we're going international again with this one, guys.
Yeah.
So guys, welcome again to our second edition of our live podcast. We're lucky enough today to have Steve Sallis. I first met Steve, I don't know if Steve will probably won't remember. It was on a midweek under 23s fixture. I was with Joe Dolan, coming across from Palace, and Joe introduced me to Steve. Steve was head of education at Millwall, and that's the first time I met Steve. And even the way he kind of, I say his aura around the place, the pitch, the players respected him, and that's something that I definitely took forward into my own career. And I want to make sure that I had that same rapport with the boys. Coming from an education background, I've always kind of felt that I've always had a good rapport, but just seeing Steve manage that in a football environment was really, really good and really, really encouraging for me to see that could be done. Carl?
Yeah, no, obviously, we've talked a lot of times, I don't want to say behind Steve's back, but I want to say we've talked a lot about Steve in regards to some of the stuff, the book and some of the stuff that we heard, his career, his kind of background, really interesting, some of the stuff, the chats, so I thought it would be great if you could kind of share that with others and, come on the podcast, really. Thank you.
Well, fellas, thanks for having me. Listen, Nate, you've never told me that story, to be fair, have you?
No.
No, it's nice. And Joe is a larger-than-life character. For those listeners that are listening, it was Joe Dolan, the old former Millwall centre-half, that's literally about 8 foot tall and about 8 foot wide. And one day, the funniest story I'll start with Joe was that I was driving a real terrible two-seater car, and it took Joe literally about 8 minutes to get in and then about 15 minutes to get out of it. He's a unit. He's now teaching PE in Australia. So yeah, top bloke, Dave.
Cool. All right, so guys, what we've done, I've just launched the poll because again, we really want this podcast to be interactive, get your guys' views and your thoughts. We really want to know where you guys are coming from. So if you guys can just start to fill the poll in, hopefully you guys can see it. And just kind of get a bit more steer or a bit more direction of where we go with this podcast. So just to kind of break the ice and kind of get into things, I know Steve's got an educational background. Steve, can you give us a bit more insight into your background, into where you are today, really?
Yeah, do you know what? It's really interesting that people say I got an educational background, because professionally I have, but my real journey was obviously an academy footballer, so having been through the system. And I always say on my Twitter, I call myself a failed footballer on Twitter, because the people were much better than me. You know, when you join Millwall and the lads are knocking on your door and they've played against Ronaldo in an FA Cup final, it sort of keeps you quite humble. And then my career went downhill quite quick. I always say I dropped a league every year in non-league from the Conference South all the way down. I went down a league. But yeah, people I was surrounded with as a child. I posted it on Instagram yesterday. Like Teddy Maybank, my godfather, he played for Chelsea, Fulham, PSV Eindhoven, Brighton. So my whole life was football as a kid. It was only that I always say to myself I wasn't good enough after my scholar, and then I moved to London to become a teacher. So it's, the word educating football probably for the book couldn't be more prominent, really, because all I am, lads, is just a bloke called Steve trying to help people. I can't emphasise that enough, to be fair.
Thanks, man. So, Steve, Brighton, obviously, we talked about you playing football and stuff. So how was it in education? What sort of happened? What led you to that sort of pathway?
Well, another message is that I failed my GCSE, so I struggled at school. So my parents separated when I said this to a friend of mine earlier, when I was about year 9 or 10. Lost my way, lost my focus at school. Was never grief at school, but just did do my GCSEs. Then I had to do night school retakes. That was quite unusual. And then my brother, who's a head teacher these days in Malaysia, he went from Brighton to Greenwich Uni, and then he was a PE teacher as well. So that's why my connections across the world and in London are quite big, because my brother almost created the family legacy before I even got to uni. So that just led, I did my placements at 3 really lively schools, and then fell into crazy schools, lads. Really, I didn't, like when you do your placements at uni, you don't go, right, I'm going to be really good with behaviour. It was just something that I just had to learn very, very quickly. I've actually got my mentor on here now, my first mentor for my first placement at the school in Greenwich. So he was, a massive influence in my life. So again, I do believe that you do need a bit of luck, but I can't emphasise enough. I spent 17 years of my life just dealing with dysfunctional behaviour. So not saying that it was right, but I got so conditioned to try and find solutions to problems, so conditioned to try and nurture, be caring, be calm under pressure. And but what I'm trying to say is the biggest message is not something that I was born with. I've just acquired it over the years, Colin.
And so listening to what you're saying in terms of behaviour and that, you worked in did you work in a special school, alternative provision, on any sort of form, or was it always mainstream?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was always mainstream. So my final placement at uni, I got offered a job which was at Crownwood School in South East London. So at the time we had 2,500 kids, and the school was failing, and you wouldn't be allowed now as a new teacher to work in a special needs school. Wouldn't be allowed, but back in the 90s, that's what happened. I mean, that was a school where Ben Chorley went, former Tranmere, Gillingham, MK Dons, Michael Turner, centre half at Norwich, Sunderland, Junior Stanislas. So we had, it wasn't anything to do with the P department. It was just to do with law of averages. The biggest school in London's going to attract some good players, isn't it? Really, that department had 14 PE teachers in, Carlin, and 13 of them were exceptional practitioners. So again, when I talk in my work about conditioned behaviour in a football club, conditioned behaviour in a school, conditioned behaviour in a business, I was conditioned early to be really professional, to, do the extras. And again, I'm fortunate because I work with some unbelievable people early in my career, and I'm lucky really in that respect.
And obviously the book, and we're probably going to dip into the book a little bit because it's got some great stuff in there that I think we talked about, me and Nave talked about really sharing and getting ideas from other people outside of this kind of trio of us. Yeah. But so at what stage did the book come in? When did you think, you know what? And what kind of geared you to write some of the things in the book? So maybe explain to the people listening a little bit about the book, and then some of the kind of key points and messages in that.
Where was it? I was a vice principal. Sounds a long story. I taught in 4 failing schools. And then my last job in education, I went back to my original school. Cut a long story short, one of my schools got closed down because 2 Year 11s committed a murder. So the council of the Borough of Greenwich had enough of the school. So I won't name the school, but I'm gutted. We all lost our jobs. So then I had to find another job, which was difficult because vice principal's jobs are not easy to acquire. I then got basically sorted out, talk about who again. My old head teacher said, look, in you come, slip through the side door type thing, which probably wouldn't be allowed now either.
Yeah.
So very grateful. And I was doing my master's degree. My master's was in educational psychology and leadership. So as people know, that a lot of people sort of call me sports psych. I'm just a bloke called Steve with different knowledge. I could go and do my PhD in sports psychology, which I've been offered to do, but I haven't done it because at the moment I'm just tired of studying. But so my point linking to the masters, Carl, and I was in such a habit of writing for 3 years part-time that I'm not taking a piss. Pardon my French, when I got home, like in January that year, I was just like withdrawal symptoms. Honestly, like what am I going to do with myself? Yeah. And then still remember the story. I joined Millwall in January 2014, and Seb Barton and all the lads around, all the academy staff, 23 staff, were sitting around the training ground, and they're going on about this thing, Carl, and they're going, this bloke's written a book. He's amazing. He's written a bock, and I'm thinking, sitting there going, is this industry that impressed with people written a book? Like, are they really that interested? And I swear to God, I went home that night. I went for a pint in Blackheath with all my mates. I said to them, I'm going to write a book, and they all laughed at me. Go, yeah, of course you are. Taking the mick out of me. And that morning, I got in at 7 o'clock. We normally start at 8. Got in at 7. Wrote my first chapter, and this is the most interesting thing about the chapter. It was so evident to me that I'm sitting at, like Nath said, on 23s games and 18s games, and you've got all these staff on the side of the pitch, all the recruitment, all the officers, some old boys who just retired watching the game, and all I could hear, you can't do that, you can't do that, he can't do that. That player struggles with that. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is conditioned behaviour right here. Yeah. Whereas in a school, the mindset is, right, you can't do it, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Or school life is, what are your super strengths? What are you good at? What are you good at? What are you good at? So that was my first chapter. My first chapter was, he can't do that. I think it's now chapter 13. So really, yeah, mate, that was how it evolved. It was almost, I'm at home twiddling my thumbs because I'm so used to working, and I just thought I could finally write what I wanted to write.
Very interesting, very interesting.
Great. Just looking at the poll that's coming in, we've got like a real mixture of backgrounds. We've got some from grassroots, some elite football, education guys, and parent as well. So just looking at some of the areas that the guys want us to focus on, and looking at the book, I know I've got it here. Well, great book here from Steve, 3,000 copies. Yeah. If we can maybe dive into maybe straight where the guys are kind of leaning towards, and it's kind of looking at creating culture, and you're looking at coming from school and then going into football, and you kind of already alluded to the fact of you've gone into football, you've seen coaches or staff members saying they can't do this, you can't do that. Maybe they're already casting their eye on the next player or the next thing to take the place of the person that can't do what they are looking for them to do. What is it, or what can you say about how to best go around creating cultures?
Most people, yeah, it's a really good question. Most people will know in my business that I do elite athletes. Did Ipswich Town today, first team, and what I said to them was, I'm not more knowledgeable than them. I just have different knowledge to them. Does that make sense? I'm not a guy who's this super brainy bloke in football and try and reinventing the wheel. I'm just a guy with different experiences. And I think that when I came into Millwall was really prominent and really evident. Like the guys at Millwall, everyone knows this, and I write about this in the book so many times. They're unbelievable people. The club is unbelievable. I'd never supported Millwall until I joined the club, and it just grips you. The staff grip you, the fans grip you, the culture grips you, and the beautiful thing about Millwall is everyone's straight. Staff are just straight talking, as you can imagine at a club with a culture like that. But coming from a vice principal's job, where in school improvement, if you haven't got strategy, you're stuffed, right? You're stuffed. Now, let me just tell a story, which I think is the easiest way to explain it in terms of the alarm bells that started ringing. When I joined the club, the academy director was a brilliant bloke, and he gave me pretty much free rein to just implement my skill set, right? Being on the academy management team, obviously head of recruitment, head of sports science, medicine, head of coaching, me, and I think that was it, 4 or 5 of us. So our job is to drive the culture. Now in a school, if I'm ahead of year 7 and then ahead of year 8 and ahead of year 9 and ahead of year 10 and ahead of year 11, and at the end of the academic year, I have to go to my head teacher in a line management meeting, and he says to me, give me the forecast of the kids and the rates of progress that they're making. And I will go for all the kids and I'll go, yeah, on task year 8, on task year 9, on task year 10, on task year 11. Year 11's under 16s. The summer I joined Millwall, we released 8 players out of 9 at under 16. And I nearly cried. Now, I didn't cry because, again, at that time, that was the right thing or the wrong thing to do. But only in football, and this is nothing to do with Millwall, this is to do with all the stories that I've heard in the game, how the self-awareness, and the first page in the book is about self-awareness, right? The clubs are saying at 12, we'll sign you, brilliant player. 13, yeah, we'll sign you. Yeah, you'll sign next season. 14, yeah, you'll sign. 15, yeah, we'll sign you. 16, sorry, lads, see you later, you're not good enough. What? For 5 years, the experts have been saying you're good enough, and then on 16th year, you're just getting rid of 8 players out of 9. Like, no, not good enough. Well, maybe, lads, maybe you're not good enough. Maybe your selection recruitment, maybe your coaching's not good enough. If I did that to head teacher, he'd kill me. The best head teacher I've ever worked for. We go, how can you say for year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, they're on task and they're on forecast, and in year 11 you're just saying, no, they failed. Like he would chop you away. So that's the easiest way I can explain. Like in a school, you've got 2,500 kids, and I don't handpick any kid. Yeah, and in a football club, you handpick every kid, and then you still say they're not good enough. Anyway, listen.
So in just listening to that story, Steve, was it was it a case of, at that point, you go, all right, what are we doing in regards to their pathway and tracking? How are we making sure that the environment or the culture, so to speak, in regards to the people's question, help support that? So was there a kind of coming together, or was it a, do you know what, we got to think about how we're doing things here, or we got to...
Yeah, and really, and it's a really delicate point. People that know me really well know that, yes, I'm very passionate, I'm very opinionated, but I'm not going to change my aspiration for better. And I think when you're working in a failing school, I said this to you last night, didn't I, in our pre-meeting to this, I said, if you're just average in a school, yeah, don't worry, you're in a gang, that's all right. Don't worry, yeah, you're an average footballer, that's all right. No, it's not all right. You can make average footballers still have a career.
Yeah.
And I still see football has got this, well, you're top set kids, you're the great one, and they get all the love. Well, no, it's not about that. It's about duty of care. And a football club is only as strong as their weakest player. A school is only as strong as their weakest candidate. So if your weakest candidate is struggling as a school, you're failing. So again, just different methodology, different mindsets, different structures around culture. I mean, Nate's original question was culture. So I think that was the main one. The next story, Carl, and I think it's an important one. When Livers and Skins, the 18s managers, they knocked on my door one day and said, Sallis, we really need your help. And this is a massively important story. I said, why is this, lads? And he said, oh, the lads are just dysfunctional. And the 18s are just not listening. I said, lads, look, again, this is the only industry I know. You've handpicked every kid and then you're moaning about them. We've only got 18 kids. I said, I've worked with 2,500 and you're moaning about 18. Now, let me explain. In London, in any city, in fact, forget city, in anywhere in the world, you get rough diamonds. You get street kids. At the time at Millwall, we didn't have the staff. This is the key component to mentor the kids. There was the ratio of staff, we didn't have the skills to mentor the kids. So what I mentioned in the book is that what's the point of knowing about football if you don't know about leadership, strategy, soft skills, emotional intelligence, kindness, we not me mentality, group dynamics, all of these things that I pick up and put to businesses and football clubs. Football 11v11 is the easy bit, Carlin, right? So linking... I
totally agree. Sorry to cut in, but I totally agree.
Yeah. So linking to the 18s manager saying to me, like, we need your help, we then have to have a discussion at length about strategy around signing better characters. Right, now let me just finalise, because I'm waffling a little bit and I want to make this clear. My legacy group is massive. I'm so proud of these boys. Right, Junior Tienza, Robert Strachan, Billy Mitchell. Right, all of those kids all got 11 A to C GCSEs. Right, the whole team apart from one. Right, so 9 out of 10 of them, from when I met them when they were 13, you're not coming on day release if you're wrong at school. You're not coming on day release if you're not making progress at school. It wasn't about them getting A grades, it was about them achieving and maximising their progress. And how can football allow a child to come out of a football club, right? How is this allowed, by the way, and go, you can be dysfunctional at school, but we'll give you football on a Wednesday. Right, that's not normal. So just to apply this, the under-16s at Millwall never came out on day release at any stage. Right, they never came out. Why? Because, well, if we release 8 of them anyway,
so education is important.
We're letting them go. Right. Anyway, I hope people get my point.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure Nathan loves to hear that, and when it goes out, we'd love to hear that, because obviously, from Nathan's point of view, we're always saying that in terms of, listen, boys, you got to be winners, or you got to have an attitude to be a winner in everything you do. So you got to have an attitude to be the best in education. You got to have an attitude to be the best in the strength and conditioning workshop. You got to have an attitude to be not just the best footballer and come in because you want to play football. Yeah, we get that, but actually we're trying to round you so that you've got an attitude to be the best and have the application in everything you do, because we know the margins, and anyone listening has heard the story about the margins in regards to when you're 16. You're probably more likely to not be a footballer than you are to be a footballer. So I think that's quite a key point in regards to creating an environment or a culture that, because what then starts to happen, and as soon as you start saying those things and the young boys, because that's what they are, young boys start getting it, all of a sudden, the environment or a culture starts to support itself, because they know as soon as they step in, the attitude needs to be 100% spot on. And if it isn't, then you're just not going to succeed here as a person, let alone as a footballer. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's a good point in regards to leading to environment and culture.
You know, I'm passionate and etc. But I'm a believer that good leaders sometimes have to be a good follower. Sometimes you've got to zip it. You know, the group dynamics of the team behind the team. It's not about me going in there with those influences. If I haven't got the management team and the coaching staff on board, then we're not going to get that change as a culture at Millwall. It's not going to happen. So the delicacies of the people influence, the soft skills, the kindness, the selflessness, the acts off the pitch, the phone calls in the evening, the messages to your staff members, like the friendships that you grow, like all of that, like is how you build the culture. It's not just me going in with this school strategy. It's not me. It's we. It's always we. Now I say me, not we, don't I? I say I and us, or me and we. Like it's always we. And so, you know, I have to speak about Livers. You know, Dave Livermore was a massive influence in the changing culture. You know, I'm this teacher guy who's his teacher hasn't played. You know, if you ain't played league games in football, you know what it's like. It's difficult for us teachers. You know, you ain't played league football. But I back myself with my football knowledge, always have. And the funny thing is, I just don't choose to be a football manager. That's just my choice. I don't want to be a football manager. So I think, like, you get that. But Livers was a massive influence. You know, he's now assistant manager at Cardiff City. Anyone that speaks about Dave Livermore, he's like a Chris Hughton character. No one says a bad word about the bloke. And we forged a great friendship. You know, Larry McAvoy, you know, literally, I love the guy, but he worships me and I worship him. Like, he had my back, you know, Sebi Barton. So these guys were willing to listen, and then they were willing, the key was, they were willing to listen to my lens and my experiences. And I didn't get it right always, because I never will and I never do. But my experiences are not better than what they had. They're just different than what they had. And I think that's the biggest point that I make. You know, working in London, and Nave's talking about raising aspiration. I worked in 4 failing schools, and it's the best thing that has ever enabled me to run a business now. Without those experiences, like, you know, even with the parents, you know, like mad stories. The easiest way to describe it is that when 12-year-olds are coming in a stab vest, and I say that in the book, you know, I've had a geezer with a gun to my head, yeah, in the school reception at 5 o'clock, you know, so like hardcore stuff. It brought me to tears, lads, you know, many times.
What it sounds like as well, though, it sounds like in terms of the staffing group, you had a good kind of a knitted team, and you kind of, maybe by luck, I don't know, sometimes these things happen by luck, but in terms of the group of you kind of looked after each other. And I think that's key as well to a culture, that everyone's kind of on board and willing to. You always hear it where a group or a team is willing to hear things that, one, they might not like sometimes, yeah. 2, it might contradict with what they're talking about, but it might have some valid points to it. So I think it sounds like you had a good team, so to speak, in regards to staff. So I think that is important in regards to culture.
A quick one. Again, I really want to make this accessible for everyone and everyone to ask questions. Lewis is coming on the Q&A, just to kind of go back to Steve's point about releases. Lewis, hopefully your mic's open. You can ask Steve the question yourself. Lou, can you hear us?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Hi, Steve. You all right?
Lewis, nice to hear from you, pal. Good lad.
Thank you. The question that I wanted to ask, do you think there needs to be better aftercare when players are released, and how would you go about achieving it?
Right, good question, Lewis. Firstly, yes is the answer, but let me just give you an applied example. This is where I'm going to give Joe Francis some stick at Charlton. I always give him some stick. He's a good mate of mine. Right, Joe's Cat 2, Millwall Cat 2. All right, Category 2 Academy. Joe's got 3 full-time staff. Millwall have got me. I teach BTEC, MVQ, do all the pre-16, all the pro-16, all the 23s. I do all of the digs. I did it all. There's just me. Joe Francis has got 3. So it's the easiest way to explain. Yes, there should be aftercare, but what people don't realise is it's a little bit like, let me give you an example. We used to go to head of department meetings in the Borough of Greenwich. The first school I worked at, just said I got 14 PE teachers. The second school I worked at, we had 4 PE teachers. Every school still needs 5 football, 5 rugby, 5 basketball teams. We've only got 4 staff. The school down the road has got 14 staff. So, you know, all the jokes at the head of the department meetings, oh yeah, you lot not doing fixtures. Well, yes, because you've got 300% more staff than we have. So the easiest way to explain it, Lewis, is sometimes people don't see the resources. Yeah, and if you haven't got the resources, you can't provide the provision that you need to do. So in answer, I hope that makes sense for that question.
All good, Lou?
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. All right, so guys, please make sure you use the Q&A button at the bottom. If you have any questions, please just make sure you get in touch and share any questions you have. If you guys have any Twitter, LinkedIn, please make sure you share this podcast. I think at the moment we're able to achieve, or been able to achieve, lots of good things just through sharing information. That's what the podcast is really all about, is sharing information and improving the provision, and not only improving the provision for the young people that we work for or work with.
Sorry, Dave. Just on the back of that, sort of retain the release and aftercare, is it growing? What's your experience of it? Is it something that's growing in terms of the aftercare support? Is it still way behind where it should be? What's your thoughts, Steve?
What, in terms of my experiences?
Yeah, your experiences, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, the retain release, here's an interesting one. I'm just thinking out loud here, Carlon. The retain release is almost a byproduct to the relationship that you have previously, isn't it? Yeah. Now, again, what my experiences were from school compared to football clubs, schools are much more transparent with the journey than football clubs are. Now, firstly, I'm going to stick up for football clubs why I think there's this gap. Parents are a little bit crazy sometimes in football clubs. They're needy. They really want to be close, right? They really want this aspiration for their kid. In a school, it's a little bit calmer. Schools can be transparent. This is why we're doing it. This is a safeguarding policy. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this, blah, blah. But in football, there's like, this is why the player welfare staff are so important. You are the buffer in the middle between the coaching staff and the parents. And it takes a very, very skilled member of staff in the coaching department to be able to have a sensible relationship with parents. Notice I use the word sensible and professional, and in a year's time still release that player, and the parents look you in the eye and go, "Do you know what, thank you so much for your due diligence. Well, I'm not happy with your decision, but I'm going to walk away and still say thanks for your help." Totally. And I think, again, what's the point of knowing about 11 v 11 if you just haven't got that ability to influence the kid, influence the parent, and influence the staff member? We call it triangulation in school. The correlation between the school, the parent, and the player. Same as a club, isn't it? You've got to get, so my point being, it's not a reactive thing, it's a proactive thing. Where if your relationships are good, if you're doing your due diligence, if you're telling the kids, this is where we want you to go every day, aspiration, 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 that's the idealistic view. But the realistic view, lads, is you're probably not going to make it. I'd say that every day. And remember, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I'm not saying you're rubbish, you're bad, you're not going to make it. I'm saying, lads, I really want you to get there, but statistically, you're probably not. So please do well at school.
Yeah.
Different things, aren't they?
Yeah.
Different
and I think also that whole process of release, it's quite a harsh word, but that work, I think, in regards to the relationship with the family, parent and child, should be kind of ongoing. It's kind of, you're here, but you really need to be here, and we got to be mindful. And if you don't get to there, these are all the things that could be in place for you, all the support mechanisms that are available to you. So I do think we kind of miss a trick and kind of focus too much on the successes and where the ones that are going to be staying on are going to be because they're children at the end of the day. So it's just got to be mindful.
Good point. Just want to mention this, Nate, just quickly. And that's what I mean about transparency. If the clubs at the start of the year got alignment with the parents and said, look, this is the reality, and drilled the reality, and send letters home about reality, and send emails to parents about reality, that's what culture is. It's not just moments on the training ground. It's building and embedding. I'll give you an example, all posh stuff that's in my book. Meta-learning. Yeah, so meta-learning means learning to learn. Instead of talking about football, it's how we learn about football. Instead of talking about science, it's how we learn about science. We used to do it. So how we can enable the parents to support the kid in terms of the triangulation, in terms of youth, elite, athlete, and how we create one. Because the parents often, I don't tell my dad how to plumb a house, and I don't tell my mate how to build his business. We within reason, we know what we're talking about. Not always, but most of the time. The parents don't know. And the clubs are not doing enough for the parents. No way.
Yeah.
Cool. So what we'll do is, rather than me going into my next bit, we'll be going into the wrong type of love and parent envy. We're going to quickly go to 3 questions. We've got one from Everton, Russ, and Morgan. So if I can just allow Everton in, let's have a quick look. Hopefully it works. To wait for Everton's mic to come on. Ev, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
How you doing? You okay?
Fine, thank you very much. How are you guys doing?
Not
How
bad.
you doing, Everton? Good to hear you,
Fine,
sir.
Carlin. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, good, sir. Good, sir.
Cool, Ev. So you can just fire a question to Steve.
Yeah, I have 3 questions, but to what Steve is talking about, I wanted to find out. I'll ask question 3 first. How important is psychological development in professional youth football?
Right. Welcome to my world of psychology. God, I'm going to open a can of worms here. Right.
Yeah.
Everton, great question, by the way, pal. In my book, when I talk about the sports psychology section,
Yeah.
sports psychology originated at PE teacher training colleges in Germany in the 1920s. So from my lens, again, so when I say lens, that means how I see the world, right? So from my lens, people in football are still scared a little bit about the word psychology. But if you look at what a psychologist does and then what a teacher does, really, they're doing the same thing. They're adding value to sporting performance. So linking to psychological pathways, as I said, my master's degree was in educational psychology. So if we look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got to feel safe and you've got to have a sense of belonging before you achieve your actual human capability. Now, there's not many coaches, and I say that again confidently, not that I'm not every coach, but there are not many coaches that are really pedagogically and research sound. So they're working off experiences, which is also really important. But at the same time, what education does is give you this research, and the key to the research, all the key to any research, is applying it. So in answer to your question, Everton, Maslow hierarchy needs is about the safety and the belonging and how we get that. Livers would say to me, Dave Livermore at Cardiff, he would say to me, Sallis, how do the lads love you? And he said, you're so hard on them. And I'll never forget him saying that. And remember, this podcast is not about me and talking about livers and all this, but this is really important. I said, Dave, I'm brutal with some of the players at times about standards, okay? And I'm never going to drop. But what you're not seeing is my soft skills. You're not seeing the phone calls, the texts, the one-to-ones, me asking players to come in before training to have a one-to-one over breakfast and a coffee. So Everton really, psychologically, you can call it whatever you want. It's all linked to great culture. I'll give you an example. You can go from one member of staff that makes you feel good to a crappy member of staff that doesn't. It's no different in a school. That's why school improvement's so difficult. Because you know, as a vice principal, the kids go in period 1, average lesson. Period 2, unbelievable teacher. Period 3, teacher. Period 4, unbelievable teacher. So the kids like this all day, you know. And you see the patterns and the trends and all the behaviour charts because the kids are getting sent out of all the weaker teachers. So again, that's why upskilling staff to have alignment and a rigid culture in terms of teaching and learning and the safety aspect is massive. So yeah, in answer, Everton, it's really difficult because we know people in football are not that self-aware, are they? And I don't mean that in a rude way, they're not that self-aware. So they don't always try and understand that they might have to align, again, behaviour and keep consistency along a journey. And as we know, some coaches are brilliant at it and some are just talking about 1v1s. You know, what's the point of talking about 1v1 if the kid's scared to do a 1v1? You know, it's madness, isn't it?
Thank you, yeah.
Cool. All right, Ev, thank you very much.
Very nice.
Ev, we'll come back. I know you've got maybe a couple more questions. We'll come back to another one of your questions. We're just going to quickly go to Russ next. Let me just get my head around this technology first. All right.
Doing a good job, mate.
I know, I'm trying. I should be like a talk show host, isn't it? You know what I mean? Get myself on Talk Sport.
You're doing well, Dave. I'll crash it.
Russ, you there?
Yeah.
All right, Russ, go ahead, my friend.
Mr. Sallis, how are you?
All right, this is right. Basically, everyone, this is my first mentor. He's a ledge.
Oh, thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much. What I want to know is, do you think that clubs are just reflecting the current state of society. So there is a driver for them to get the best out of the young people for them. And that is purely a reflection of society at the moment, because I'm not sure I see anywhere a system where it's geared to get the best out of the young people. I just wondered on your thoughts on that.
Right. I'm going to stick up for the football clubs for a change. Right. I've gone from inclusion in school to elite. Right. So that is, and you couldn't get further, could you? Completely inclusive to complete elite. And the number one KPI and all of our performance management, particularly the academy and directors, number one key performance indicator is create players for the first team.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't do that, he loses his job. Fair point, everyone? So where we have to also go in with eyes wide open is just understand, and I think this is again linking to the lack of details of the parents. There's not enough support for the parents. There's not enough education for the parents. All the players are getting this, but the parents are not getting enough to understand. So let me just give you an example, Russ, because I wouldn't have known this until winning. There was a player at Millwall, I won't name his name, that was under 14, that was good enough to be in the under 16s. He's playing for England at the time in the under 15s, a year above his age group. Now, we've got two players in the under 15s and under 16s in the same position. So talk about duty of care. We're not some brutal industry. But this kid is an England international, and we have to somehow create a pathway. And at the same time, we've got to be inclusive to the players above and below. Right? We've got to give that game time to that player. Right? This is the sort of thing that I didn't know about until winning the club. What a difficult decision that is, isn't it? You've got to have duty of care for all your players. You've got to have an inclusive policy. You've got to have equal opportunities. At the same time, you've got this player that needs game time, and he needs to be fast-tracked, right, within reason. So, yes, football clubs are doing that for their own benefit. But, Russ, one thing I've learned going from education into business is that this is business. So when people are losing their jobs, I think that, I don't know, I hope that answer makes it a little bit clearer, is that, you know, my lens on football's changed because I've been in it and I realise how hard it is for some of the people in the football clubs to try and do that. You know, remember, there's some CEOs out there that put massive pressure on academy directors. There's some CEOs out there that are very sophisticated, that are very calm, that are very long-term thinkers. There are some CEOs that are under pressure from their board members, and not in a rude way, some of the board members have not got a clue. But they direct straight to the CEO. So again, the education, one thing I'd say, Russ, on this, actually, making me think out loud, the education across clubs strategically around youth development is not as good as it should be.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, Steve, I wasn't criticising clubs. I think as a business, they're only holding a mirror up to society. I think, you know, it's like, you know, every parent around that pitch that's watching, they might be supporting the team, but we all know, in all honesty, it's their kid they want to make it. And I just think that, you know, even if we look at our education system now, I'm not convinced that it is there to get the best out of every youngster. And so I wasn't criticising the club at all.
No, but this is interesting, isn't it? Because the difference between education and a football club, again, I mean, the luck you need, I'll do a pretend toying cost, the luck you need to be a footballer is unbelievable. Let me explain again, position specific. You could have a player in one age group at under 18s, and then you haven't got anyone underneath. They get a pro because there's no one above or below. Like, ridiculous amount of luck to get your first pro. So, you know, not all players, of course, some of them earn it, but sometimes you're relying on position specific. If the 23s haven't got a left back, right, if they haven't got one, and there's an 18s there that's 50-50 and he's a left back, and there isn't one around, the 18s will get a pro because they need a left back to actually fulfil the fixtures.
Yeah.
Right, so listen, I'll probably just stum it, but that's the reality of the game, isn't it?
There is that 100% that goes on, and we all know that, and people working in the environment know that as well. It's just, there's a lot of duty of care clashes with it's just almost like duty of care versus business a lot of the time, because you're dealing with young people at the end of the day. So it is very difficult to have that balance. And again, I guess we come back to that culture bit. If the culture's right, then you never really have that kind of confrontation between the two. It sets itself up where you're going, yes, we know it's all business and it's an elite environment, and we are talking about the small percentages that generally make it through, versus you're dealing with young kids, 200 young people, and every year you're dealing with 15 to 20 young people that you're saying to them, majority of them, you're saying to them, you're not good enough. Do you know what I mean? So it's difficult. And I guess if nothing else, the message is you get your culture right, everything kind of, it becomes easy to do those kind of difficult things, and business doesn't have that confrontation. So it's interesting.
And in support of that, let me just emphasise that again. If you've got loads of good working relationships with the parents, the release date, you're never going to get a happy win. No, you're never going to get 3 wins on a release date. But it's not about the release date. It's about all the stuff that goes on beyond it.
Yeah.
You know, some of the Millwall staff were really detailed. Like Kenny Brown at Millwall would always have like numbers for Dagenham, AFC Wimbledon, you know, and always say, I'm going to call for you. You know, already there. Not, I'll do it later. He would, look, there's the number and I'll do it. You know, so there are some brilliant people out there. You know, I think, again, I can't judge everyone without knowing the full facts. The trends state there's a lot of stuff to still do in football, but we all know there's some brilliant work that's still going on.
Yeah, agree. All right, some good questions from the people outside. Nice to hear. Couple of things from the book, Nave.
Yeah, before I go into that one, I was conscious of just where we came from and Lewis and Morgan's question. I know his mic's not currently working, but Steve, in terms of reviews and your experience and your opinions of the quality of reviews that players are given, to the feedback that's coming back from the coaches, to the young people, to the parents, when they're told they need to improve. Let's have a look. Are they just told the areas needed, or is it skillfully led forward, or are they skillfully led forward?
Right, 18s, you get more time. It's a full-time program. So your reds, your ambers, your greens, your rag rating, strength, areas development, serious areas development, 4 corner, tack, fizz, sight, all your objectives sort out for the month. For the 6 weeks. We had, standard stuff. I bought this in 6 years ago. We had all the players delivering to us, like presenting on PowerPoints with a clicker. Some good, some bad. Not about the outcome, is it? It's about the process. They can be as bad as they wanted. I wouldn't have given 2 hoops. But it was really, really good to get all the youth teamers were doing all that. Now, we then introduced that to the 16s and 15s and 14s of Millwall eventually. The problem with the 16s, 15s and 14s, it's time, because they've got to be out on the grass. So in answer to the question, there is loads and loads and loads of work to get done at all levels. I mean, the 23s for me is still the biggest worry. 23s, anyway, I won't go down that route today. It's madness. You get all this support at 18s and then you just get nothing at 23s, and then we wonder why they disappear off the face of the earth. So that's another one. But in terms of the teaching and learning, whoever asked the question, in my opinion, because I'm teaching and learning man all day long, there is massive gaps. I'll give you an example. I'm working with Premiership players. I'll call them and they go, I'll say to them, have you done a rag rating on your 4 corner model? And they go, firstly they go, what's a rag rating? And then the next they'll go, what's a 4 corner model?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
We're struggling.
Yeah, madness.
Okay.
All right, cool. So just going into the book, and I'm then going to slide, hopefully it's a nice segue into Mark. We'll kind of slide into Mark, and then we go into another colleague, Simon. So in terms of looking at the wrong type of love and parent envy, and then hopefully that's a nice little segue into the agent world and intermediaries and things of that nature. Where, what are your thoughts in the book? People haven't read it yet, in terms of the wrong type of love for a young person.
Right, yeah. It's not my position to now go parent bashing. Let me just explain about, in my book, I'm going to sidetrack slightly, Nave, to the prove or improve concept.
Yep.
Which is all the work and the study I've done on Carol Dweck that talks about growth mindset. So if I said to your listeners now, what's more important, to prove yourself or to improve yourself? Now, one regret that I have is that I didn't explain this very well in the book. Right, I should have done that a lot better. So you say to a player, you say to all the players in all my one-to-ones, all my sports psych sessions, all my mentoring sessions, what's more important, prove or improve? Now, people that know teaching and learning at such a level know that teaching and learning, and Simon Ord was in this. So when I was at the Football League conference, I spoke, and the title of my delivery, of my presentation was process or outcome. Right? What's more important, the outcome, the victory, proof, or what's more important, the process? And sometimes coaches really want things to look clean. They like it. Look at my lesson. Look at my session. It looks nice. It's loads of nice things. But we know that teaching and learning ain't clean. We know that it's scruffy. We know that assessment for learning is scruffy and assessment of learning is scruffy. We know that behaviour for learning techniques can become scruffy. So again, linking to the parents are so prove orientated traditionally. My son's got to win. My son's got to play well. But what about the places where learning's really scruffy and horrible, and your son or daughter has a real bad 3 weeks, and they're in the car, and you're disappointed as a parent, and the kid's in the car complaining and worrying and all this? What about the importance of that? What about the reflection time of that? What about teaching kids how to reflect properly with simple things like what went well and even better ifs? Simple things like remembering your superscripts. Simple things like a rag rating. And reminding the players in a sophisticated way that, okay, this has happened. Can you watch your video? Can you assess it? Can you study it? What do the kids want to do in the video? I know kids, because you know kids like I do. They just want to watch the good bits in their game.
Highlights.
Yeah, there we go. And the top players will sit there for 90 minutes and go, bosh, 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 and they'll do their own coding. That's the level we need to get at. Clubs are doing too much for the players, right? But we need to meet them halfway. We need to meet the players. I call it, scaffolded learning. We've got to meet the players halfway. But that's linked to core values again. Commitment, own your shit, be responsible. And if you do that, you get excellence. So I'm sort of waffling a little bit here, but I'm trying to bring in strategy again, because without strategy, you don't get player detail. Without strategy, you don't get teaching and learning. Because without strategy, you got a load of needy players. But with strategy, you got a load of players that do their stuff on their own.
Yeah. You start developing the independent learners, don't you? And I think that as well. That comes from a sort of a coaching environment where coaches generally, and yes, you get a mixture of different types of coaches, but in terms of generally and traditionally, coaches want to be able to command and tell. You do get some observation from coaches, and that's a skill set that coaches do have as well. But yeah, definitely what can happen is that because if they're not told it or they're not developing it in a way that they can start to believe that they're in control. That's the word I think I'm looking for. The control of the environment generally coaches want to have. And if they don't feel like they have the control of it, maybe they might be judging themselves. Is their learning taking place? It looks messy, but is their learning taking place? And all those sorts of things it becomes a reflection of the coaching and themselves rather than what's happening for the players. So I think that's quite important to think about.
Good point.
Yeah.
Cool. So if we kind of just go into Mark, hopefully Mark can hear us. And Mark's got a really nice question. So Mark, are you there?
Hi, gents. Yeah, I'm there. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm really enjoying the podcast. Really interesting topics. I would suggest we could spend about a week on rather than just an hour. So, it's plenty of food for thought. So thank you. I'm really enjoying it. My question then, Steve, was managing expectation is huge. I think that's part of what you were touching on earlier around, it shouldn't be a surprise that you're saying at 16 you're not fit for purpose as a young player and you're not good enough for our academy. But I also find the relationships with parents seems to reduce at the older age groups with 18s, 23s. And for one of the biggest problems there is intermediaries getting involved, taking over. And we seem to be getting mixed messages that the expectation level at the club, which we're trying to set, is completely different from an agent who wants him and other players on his books. We'll be telling them a completely different story about how many clubs will want these players. And I've got a couple at the moment where I'm not seeing the clubs coming through that they keep promising, and the players feeling a little bit in the middle of it, and their parents in the middle of it, of feeling that there's somewhere along the line either the club or the agent are being misleading in terms of expectation.
Mark, firstly, I can empathise with that because I've been there, but I'm just going to give you probably a nugget. When you were talking, Mark, I was just thinking really deeply about all of the interactions I had. It was almost like a flashback then of all of these parents. And I'm thinking about, why are they calling me? Why are they calling me? And I think it goes back to, people that work with me. Nath knows me, reasonably well. Like, I'm really straight. I'm really straight. And I'm always really straight, and I've always been really straight. I'm also hopefully knowledgeable on things like rejection, child psychology, culture strategy, and then linking all of those things in to the parents and the agents. It's just about influence again. And I know that you see the 18 parents less and the 23's parents less. And if I'm honest, Mark, the 18's parents did call me less, but they still called me if they were unsure about something. Now, when you're new into a club, really difficult because people ain't got a clue who you are. But people still talk, and I think if you still, I try to just be the voice of reason. People, I'm much more passionate now than actually what would be in a football club. Like, at times you got to tone yourself down. You got to be a good listener. You've got to change gear with people in terms of sit to first gear, and you've got to have soft skills. So I think the answer is keep just doing the right things. But remember, the right things are the controllables, aren't they? The uncontrollables are the crap agents. The uncontrollables are the parents get influenced wrongly. And do you win them all the time? Of course not. But I think if you just keep doing the right things, and here's an example for you. Every Wednesday with the scholars, the 18s, and they would hate me for it, but I'd read them a book. They go, oh, this is boring. I don't care. I'd read them like a sports psych book. We would do we would do fun stuff. It would be nothing to do with BTEC. My point is, what another great opportunity to have an open forum. I always say this about Horseshoe Classroom. I hate lines, drives me mad. Coaches at pro level still doing lines. It's mental, by the way. And then just talk about who's got an agent, and the lads go, oh God, I can't do it. But as the player welfare, you're, supposedly the one that they can do that with. And the beautiful thing about in player welfare, the beautiful thing is that you're not picking any of the teams. You don't pick the teams. So you can really afford to be good cop most of the time. So I think that's the beautiful thing about the job. What I loved about the job is that with kindness and diligence and strategy, yeah, the agents do cause a pain in the arse, but I think the key is the influence with the parents as early as you can. And that is, Mark, if I'm honest, that's just hard work of just making phone calls. Old school, isn't it?
I agree.
Old school making phone calls. Being at the training ground when player welfare hours are a nightmare, aren't they? You've done your 8 till 5, 6. All the kids are coming into training at 6:30, and you're like, parent pulls you for this and a parent pulls you for that, and then suddenly you get home at 9 o'clock. You've done a 15-hour day because you're a nice bloke. So it's hard, Mark, isn't it? I'm struggling to answer that one.
No, you have answered it. Thank you. You've given me some really good ideas there of sort of just how some you don't win them all. You're right, and I think some of the interaction will be less at that age group, but actually keep going, keep plugging away.
Yeah.
Soft skills are huge, aren't they?
Just people influence. Maybe, that's a task, Mark. Maybe just say, who are the best people to influence here?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mark.
Cheers, Mark. Good to hear from you, man. Hope you're staying safe, yeah?
I am, thank you. Yeah, and you.
All right, top man.
Thank you.
All right, Carl. Anywhere to go next? Anywhere you want to go next before we go to Simon? From
creating culture. We spoke about it yesterday a little bit, Steve, in regards to footballing environments and academies per se leaning towards, whether it is or isn't, education environment. So me and Nath talk about it all the time, and sometimes in regards to getting messages over to coaches, players, anyone really who's connected, stakeholders, parents, everyone. We often say, if you was in a school, you would be the head of year. When you talk to maybe a lead coach, if you was a head of education, you would be on the SLT team, and you would be dealing with this and we talk about it all the time, and more so maybe, I don't know, in terms of the governing bodies and their influence over what academies are doing, and whether or not they're saying, well, it works in education, or this works, safeguarding works, so we need safeguarding in an academy now, player care and all that. What's your thoughts around that?
Right, do you know what I've just done? Right, I've just Googled, and I've done this before. I do this in my corporate training for football clubs. The definition of the word academy. Right, you ready for this? Because this is going to nail in a nutshell. So the definition, I know it's Google, so don't take me literally, but it says a place of study or training in a special field. Right. So I've never known an industry just like overkill, like particularly the 12 to 16 program, like that's football. Hold on, they're children. Yeah. Right. The facts are they're children that are probably not going to make it. Not in a rude way. They're the facts. We're going to try and do dual aspiration, dual to be a superstar pro, dual aspiration to be an academic, and if you're not an academic, be an entrepreneur. There's another thing that we miss, don't we? We don't drive entrepreneurship. We don't drive it. It's just school or football. Well, outside of school bubble, there's a big wide world with your name on it. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, I don't know, guys. I think, again, it's the coaches. And here's another question, not an answer. Do the listeners think that because coaches traditionally haven't had a high level of education, and I've got some research to back this up, so it's not an opinion, that's a fact, and their experiences of football were playing, do you think that affects the culture of football in terms of an educational aspect? That's one back to you.
All right,
because a lot of coaches have been players.
Yeah, and I mean, what's interesting in terms of I've spoke about it before, and you get two types of coaches. I think you get the academic coach and you get the football coach. So you get the academic coach who they studied to be a coach. They weren't never played at a higher level. Probably played a bit of football, loved the game, and then started to study it quite early in their kind of coaching career. Then you get linked to what you're talking about, Steve. Is you get the kind of football coach who all they know is football. They played the game from 16, professional, maybe not even professional, semi-pro, but heavily involved in football. And then after that, it was like, well, it's coach time. I need to be a coach now. And because of that, all their experiences in regards to how to deal with people, all the stuff you talked about, the soft skills you talked about, they kind of have learnt that through their environment of playing football and kind of go, well, this is how I was trained to do things. So this is always, it worked for me, and I had a semi-successful or successful career. So that's how I'm going to treat others, because I know it works for people. So,
Carlin, I've got an unbelievable point to make now, right? There is knowledge. This is interesting about culture and strategy, Nate. You're going to like this, right? So you guys have got the knowledge. Respective people that work with you have to decide, so let's say it's a coach in this example, whether they want to borrow and steal your knowledge, Nath. Now, that is a skill within itself. In my book, I talk about zooming in and zooming out. An expert hires an expert. And the problem with football that we got an ego attached to some experts, and therefore there's an ego. They won't go, do you know what, Nath, what do you think here? What do you think here? I used to say to the mill lot, I haven't been as good as you. Oh, I weren't as good as you. So I need your knowledge. I need it. I need that when we're doing, a dovetail with a player, and it's an issue that we need to address, I need your knowledge. I need you to sit there and influence them in that way. But you need my knowledge. Now, there's not many football coaches that have taught 30,000 kids, is there? There's not many sports psychologists that have done the hours of 30,000 kids. So I think we need to get away again from intelligence being about an A license and a degree. If we know that every teacher's got a teaching degree, right? This is the mad thing about teaching. Some teachers, and Nate will know this, and you'll know this, Carl, and you've worked with them, are unbelievable, right? They're unbelievable people. And some teachers have got the same quals and they're shocking. Like, how does that work? Doctors all got a PhD. Sometimes you walk out of a doctor's surgery, you feel $1 million, and sometimes you just feel shite. Why is coaching any different?
Yeah, true. I
so
agree.
Intelligence is about behaviour. It's about behaviour. How we act, how we interact, how we react, as I said in the book. So yeah, tough.
And linked to what you said before, I know we've got some good stuff coming in from the people listening, but linked to what you said before, I often find, and there's no disrespect to anyone, to be honest, I often find the coaches that are able to form relationships with the players often you see that kind of culture in regards to their group. You see success there. You see learning there ultimately, to be honest. And it can come in two different ways, where they feel safe in the environment, so they can make mistakes, they can learn all that sort of stuff, but also they have belief in the teacher or the coach, so to speak. So it's quite interesting in terms of the behaviour you're talking about. But I often think the ones that I see, because the teachers that may be not good, I think they have the same information, but they just don't have that connect. Do you know what I mean? They don't get that connect with, and this comes in education and in coaching and football, to be honest, where I just think sometimes just delivering that connect first is probably more powerful than actually having the knowledge to give to the young people. So it's just so interesting in regards to what you're saying about behaviour.
Yeah, I think again, I'm doing some work with the Scottish FA now. I've got a good gig with them. I'm doing all their pro license and all their A license leadership and teaching and learning stuff. And again, there's no point me going into the pro license lot who have played in old firm derbies, talking to them about 11v11, because that's the stuff that we already know about. But what they don't know about is all of the social science behind the players that they're managing. Let me just apply this. You're two black guys on one white guy, right? I wouldn't have known.
Hang on a minute, what are you talking about?
Known about Nigerian youths. I wouldn't have known about that. Now, people are probably saying, what's that? Now, the first thing you learn in the PE department are that kid's Nigerian. If you call home, they're likely, unfortunately, to get hit at home. Like, what are you talking about? And as a young teacher, when you're learning your trade, you're learning about culture. You're learning about African culture, you're learning about Caribbean culture and the differences. And the amount of youths that I taught that were Nigerian that were crying in my office going, sir, please do not call home. Now, if you apply that to football, where some managers have not got the social science knowledge, the toolbox, they haven't got it. Why, in many respects to the football managers, why would they know? My point is that Nathan and Carlin, you've got experiences that no other coaches have got, and football needs to start zooming out and stop putting the ego away and stop, I've got to be the decision maker, and start looking at what knowledge we got. In summary, lads, I have a saying, I love a saying, everybody knows more than somebody, and it can't be any more put better than that.
Yeah. Go on, Dave, you go.
No, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. I can even see some of the comments from some of our audience in terms of they couldn't agree more with what Steve said. The common phrase of "we did like this in my day," and we had Morgan Lewis as well, who used to play for Bournemouth, and he recently wrote a bit about what we just discussed. So if I might just bring in now, if I can, Simon. Let's try bring him in. Simon Ord.
Simon the legend, the greatest man from the Midlands.
Let's have a look. All right, hopefully Simon can get on the mic.
Hi guys.
Simon, you well?
Yeah, thanks guys. Enjoyed it so far. Steve, you've got a great face for radio, my old son. Just really to summarise and agree with what you said. And this is about human connection and human relationships. Everything you've said about culture, coaching, and everything else you've said is about getting to know the parents, getting to know the families, getting to know the kids, the backgrounds. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody who understands that. And it's no surprise, in amongst this horrific situation we're in, all the heads of education are non-furloughed. They've all been kept on, and I don't wish furlough on anybody. You've got to ask why that is the case. It's because of the value that you're adding, guys, and the trust and the relationship you have with the players. The only one thing I was going to say, and ask Steve on this, and this is one of my frustrations, and I know you're touching on with the 23s, is that we have, I'd like to think we've got a great culture at Derby, and I trust the kids and trust the parents, and we would do a lot of work with the 23. Where it goes, Pete Tong, for me, is that sort of post-23, and we'll talk about alignment and culture, and because there's such a change of first-team managers all the time in football, that's the problem area for me. That's where the kids go at the deep end and suddenly, can be swimming without armbands.
Yeah, I think, Audie, it's a brilliant point. Like in Italy, there used to be directors of football years ago, didn't they? In the 80s. Used to watch Gazzetta Italia Sport and be a director of football. And then in the 90s and early 2000s, it was like, no, we can't have one. They're poison. It always causes faction. It was only till I was at Millwall that you realise that there has to be a gap between the CEO, that's traditionally an accountant type manager, business, and then you've got the first team manager that has absolutely no skills whatsoever other than football, and then just someone in the middle just to align that. Now, obviously, UCFB, Uni, and all the Wembley stuff, they're doing all these degrees now in sporting directorship, but only in football would we already be 30 years behind. And football's patting itself on the back, going, wow, look at what we're doing. Like we've got strategy now. But my point is, if you keep getting first team managers and keep losing them, then you're right, Audie. That's what happens. Then there's just dysfunctional operational stuff. Because, strategy is your short-term and medium-term stuff, but operational is how it looks on the ground level, day to day. And obviously that's always going to be flawed because there isn't anyone in the middle, but when the new person comes in, new person goes. I think the only club, by the sounds of it, they've done it for 20 years is Southampton, isn't it? Are they still the main club that are doing it in terms of irrelevant to first team managers? They just keep following out the same process or not?
Yeah, I think so. They've got a very, very good reputation with their academy for that. But it's just that whole club culture, and let's not play a game pretending that it is always the case like that. There is that sort of divide still, and that's the biggest challenge for me, I think, in a minute.
In terms of the uncontrollables, then the stuff that is out of your hand. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your help, Stephen. It's been.
No, that's all right. Just give everyone an applied example, so we can apply what Simon talked about. A classic example would be an 18s lad's done no college work for about 3 weeks. He's been injured, and then the 23s manager says to the 18s player, right, you're in the squad this week, and then the 18s player's not at college again. But a great 23s manager will call up the 18s manager. The 18s manager will call you, and then they will go, right, what's he like? Should he play? And I was in a brilliant position at Millwall because if I said they weren't playing, they weren't playing.
Yeah, same here. But, same here.
Yeah, but again, you're relying on people rather than strategy.
Yeah.
So very, very difficult. Very, very hard. Very hard.
Top man. Appreciate that. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Simon.
Well, we kind of end with an advice corner. So we kind of ask for your best advice for maybe one or two groups of individuals. So if you had a young coach coming into academy football who's gone to university, has a part-time job as well, what advice would you give that young person wanting to come to the academy and make a difference?
Make them be themselves. Be kind. Be a good listener. Football doesn't have a lot of good listeners, does it? Ask them about their lens on the game, their views on life, and just normal things, really, Nath. Just nothing crazy, but giving them the, mentoring's a fine art. Giving them the confidence to feel safe themselves. Just say, I'm coming to Millwall, I'm coming to this club, and I walk in that door and I feel energy from other people. But often football's a bit like, well, you're a newbie and you're not important and you ain't played league football, so I can't really talk to you right now, unfortunately. So again, it's about having really good people around you to try and influence you in that way. But mainly standard stuff, Nath, to be fair. I hope that it's not a very flash answer, is it?
No, no. Sometimes they're the basics, isn't it? The basics. Sometimes people forget the basics. And, being a good listener, be kind, wanting to find out how other people's days are, sometimes goes amiss in the environment. Sometimes quite driven towards performance or this or that. Sometimes you can just miss out who the person is. It's getting better, definitely, for sure, but definitely.
Jimmy Bullard would always say to me, Nath, less is more.
Cool.
Always.
Cool. And the last one for me, I don't know if Carlin's got another one, but what would be a bit of advice you would give to an academy manager who's taken over an academy? They're doing all right, but what could they do to help improve or shift a culture or put something in place for they want to make a stamp on it?
Number one thing. Number one thing. For 6 to 8 weeks, don't do anything. It's just number one thing. Listen, talk to everyone, find out about everyone, what everyone's why is, what's people's why for turning up to work. Be very sophisticated in your behaviour, very, very calm with your detail. Don't send any emails for 4 weeks, pretending that you've got to change. How can you got to change things? How can you change things when you don't know what's need changing? So gap analysis, you know, a gap analysis of the academy. What are the super strengths? And you'll get that from finding out about people. Once that's embedded, it's about looking at the staff super strengths and saying, look, where can we maximise? Then you've got you've got a bit of super strength here, and you've got a bit of audit here, and the audit's saying, look, this is where we're at, and this is where we need to get to. And then really, I think a year later, once you've really embedded down the relationships with the staff, then you can really start looking at medium to long-term strategic stuff. I hope the answer in summary is sophisticated leadership. You know, being really measured in your decisions, being really measured in your emails, being really measured in your conversations, and then trying to get a real best fit, and then trying to grow sensibly, really.
I think that's a brilliant answer. Carl, anything you want to add?
No, not really. I mean, I could talk to Steve and going on 2-3 hours. We could just sit here and chat, to be honest. But these things have to come to an end. Great listening to you, hearing some of the stuff. Guys that are listening, thank you. Make sure you get the book.
Quality.
Find out a little bit more. But no, great stuff. Great stuff.
Guys, if you really enjoyed it, please don't forget to share it on your LinkedIn, your Twitter. We are growing really, really well. We're growing quite well in terms of an independent podcast that pretty much started up from me and Carl and just talking about it. We've managed to get on some fantastic guests such as Steve. Steve, where can we get the book? This is a question at the moment.
Just solutionsmindset.com. Solutions Mindset website, just a PayPal link. But lads, let me just finish on this. The reason you're doing well when you're going to do well is because you're 2 nice blokes, and you're 2 caring blokes, and you're 2 diligent blokes. So, you know, even the details of preparing this last night says a lot about you. It's not just winged it off the cuff. We had, for everyone's information, we had a chat last night for a good half an hour about how it would flow. So, lads, top professionals.
Cheers. Thank you. All right, guys. Yep. Have a really, really good one. Stay safe. Hopefully we'll have a follow up to this, and hopefully try to get Steve on later on maybe the new season. But yeah, really, really appreciate it, guys. Have a really good one. Stay safe.
Cheers, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone. Cheers. Take care.
Cheers.